Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. I'm Cassidy. If you are new here, welcome. It's really nice to have you. And if you are returning, welcome back. It's really good to see you again. So today will be a far different video than the usual for me. Instead of talking about a book and the summary of the book and my thoughts while reading it, or even a book series as a whole, I'm just going to be talking about me as an aspiring author and part of my writing process, and specifically outlines. So in case you don't know, I do want to be a published author one day. I have written one novel completely. It still needs a couple rounds of editing, but I finished that and I'm almost done with my second novel. And I just want to have a little conversation about outlines. If you see me look down or off to the side at all, I'm just referring back to my notes. I jotted down just a couple for this video. So there are a lot of different ways to write a story, especially a long one like novel length or even a novella length. There are a lot of different tips and tricks that people use, formatting, or just how they do it in general. And one thing that I know people differ on are outlines. Some people don't use an outline at all, and then they just kind of know what the story is about, where they want it to go in their head, and they just write and kind of let the story flow. Some people write a very intense outline where they write down every single thought or feeling that the character has throughout, every conversation they have, everything that happens in the novel. They write a quick little outline like character A meets character B and they talk about character D or something like that. Those people, they write and they know exactly where the story is going. There are no surprises, no twists or tricks that they don't know about, at least not after finishing the outline. And I go somewhere in the middle, and I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. So the way I use an outline is I will outline just a couple of chapters, like 3 to 5 chapters, and I'll write what will happen in those chapters. Character A meets character B and they talk about character D. And then I write those chapters, and those chapters only, and then I outline the next couple, and then repeat. The reason I do it that way is because the first novel that I completed was never meant to be a novel. I went into it thinking that it was just going to be a short story, and it did not want to be a short story. I always like to say that the story told me it wanted to be a trilogy. And so I let it, and I'm working on it, and I'm writing it. If I was very strict with outlines, even for a short story, then the story never would have been able to flow and tell me kind of where it wanted to go. I think that a story should have freedom. And as I'm writing, if something pops into my head as I'm just writing it, and I feel that the story is meant to go that way, then I'll do it. I like that the story can be a little bit more free and a little bit more flowy and not so rigid and structured. Not that a story written with a very strict structure and outline can't feel free and flowy when you're reading it, but for me personally, I like when the story, as I'm writing, has that freedom to kind of go where it wants to go. However, the first novel didn't have any kind of an outline. I just wrote with an idea and some determination. And I do need a little bit more structure. So that's why I write an outline for a couple of chapters ahead, and then I write those chapters. That way, if I'm like, oh, hey, this story would go really well if it flowed in this direction, and I like it that way, then I can just add those. Then I can just add those ideas and that chapter in to the story without having to rearrange everything and figure out if that works. And I don't have to look at the entire outline as a whole. It just gets added in. And then going through editing, I'll make sure it all flows correctly and that is in the correct place. And that's where things get a little bit more structured. But writing it for the first draft, I think it's important that there is some freedom so that the story can kind of figure out where it wants to go and who it wants to be. This system seems to actually work really well for me, and it seems to fit me and my personality best. I like deadlines and I like lists, don't get me wrong. I do like some structure in my life, but not a ton. And I like to just kind of live and vibe and chill and, oh yeah, let's hang out, but I don't really care what we do. So a little bit of structure and a little bit of planning, but not that much. Not where it's, okay, we're going to meet here and go eat here. I like to just flow and see where the world takes me. And so that's what I let my story do. that's what I let my stories do as well. However, I don't want it to appear like I'm like saying that strict structure is bad at all. That works really well for a lot of stories, and I know a lot of authors do have very intense outlines and where they write down every little thought and idea, and that's how they work best, and that's what works for them. And everyone is so individual, and everyone is so unique in who they are that of course the way you write is going to be so unique. I think it makes sense that it would kind of mirror who you are as well. And then on the other hand, there are probably a lot of people that just write without an outline, and that's not wrong either. Not for them. It would be wrong for me. And it would be wrong for the people who write very strict and intense outlines, but the people who just kind of write with an idea and some determination, and they just write a summary afterwards, and when they edit it, they make sure it all makes sense and it all flows. That's what works for them, and that's great too. There's so many different ways to write a story, a novella, a novel, in general. So many different ways you can do it, ways you can go about it, places you can write, what time of day you write, and it's also personal to who the individual is and what works best for them. So for me, having a little bit of an outline, but very fluid and not structured one, is what works best for me. But that doesn't mean that that's what's going to work best for you if you are trying to figure out what kind of outline works for you. So that's what works best for me. Nobody on the internet who you don't know and probably don't trust. But what works for you guys? I would love to know if you're still trying to figure out whether or not you want to do outlines at all. Maybe something like what I do would be very beneficial and really help you. And maybe that sounds like a nightmare to you. You hate outlines and never want to use them in your life, or you can't imagine not having a very strict and structured outline. So I'd love to hear how you guys write a story, especially with outlines. Do you use them? Do you not? Is it somewhere in the middle? If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!